You can record.
Okay, Roger and Patrick, you guys were two of the special effects supervisors on Star Wars: The Force Awakens. Did you feel any pressure at all when you got the job to work on one of the most highly anticipated films ever?
Yeah, really. Yeah, I mean, of course I mean, you want to, and hey, we all need a little pressure, don't we? I mean, pressure means it's a huge challenge and it's a lot of fun, and somehow you don't want to lose sight of that in the middle of all this and sort of melt into a pool of jelly on the floor with all of knowing that, that there are millions of fans out there. But I have to say, when we went to Celebration with the first trailer and I saw that audience go absolutely nuts, I thought, good Lord, I wonder what the facial reconstructive surgery and the process of changing your name if we screw this up. Well, how does
And of course, all the artists at ILM are some of the biggest fans and harshest critics if you do anything wrong as well. So
yeah, so we would internally lynched anyway, wouldn't we? So but it's fun, isn't it? I mean, look, put it this way, isn't it great to work on something that people really care about? I mean, that's the truth, and we're fans and we want to get it right, and quite frankly, I mean, it doesn't really matter, but we've freaking killed ourselves on this thing, and why wouldn't we? Because it's Star Wars, we want to kick ass, we want people to go, oh my God, this is unbelievable. And I don't know, so yes, it's a huge challenge.
Well, share with us some of your stories about the special effects work, because I'm guessing there was a mix of practical and digital effects here.
Yeah, totally, and that really was for me the interesting thing was just how to you go back and you go, okay, why did people fall in love with those early movies? And maybe if the second set of movies got slightly off base, what were those qualities? And how do you somehow go back and recapture that sort of DNA? What was at the root of that? And JJ is a huge fan, so I don't think it was a huge challenge for us to figure out, we want to go back to real locations, we want to build sets, we want to do more in-camera stuff when we can. But the truth is, then there's this big gap, and you somehow need to bridge that gap. And how do you not just make a retro movie? How do you make something that's sort of fresh and exciting, but kind of like an old friend? It's kind of like your old pal turns up that you haven't seen for a while, but he's wearing a new snazzy suit. You just want to have that kind of level of excitement, and we just felt that kind of marrying the most contemporary technology with some kind of really old school ideas was going to create this kind of amazing, I'm going to use a word like, I don't even understand what it means, symbiosis. What does that mean? or just something fantastically exciting. And so that's where we were going with it all,
Well, one thing that we got to do on this film, which I think is a little bit different than most, is that we had so much great reference of things that were shot for real that we were able to sort of use our efforts to sort of extend the world that was already created. So we weren't thinking too much about creating something out of nothing, which I think that leads you down a lot of paths of you need to spend a lot of energy and time doing things that they just don't pay off that much because it's stuff that people expect to have happen. But what we were able to do on this is we were able to say, oh, look at all these fantastic sets. Look at all these props. Look at the ships that were built. They didn't fly, obviously. We had to do that part. But look at all the stuff that's already there. Now we just need to extend this and make this stuff live and make it animate and do things that are beyond what could be shot. And we were able to use our energy to do, I think, what was important. And I think that's like, what can we do to cut down on the amount of wasted time and energy that you spend doing things that are just sort of no one notices or cares about, and so we spent our time doing the things we thought people really wanted to see. So
yeah, and we had a very there's a lot going on in some of those frames, and we're trying to create these sort of new very exciting images. But it's really about trying to immerse the audience in this world. I mean I'm a very young man, but I'm just casting my mind back to being that 12-year-old boy and just how. Well, I wasn't 12, sadly, in 1977. But if I had been, what that quality is. Why do you get excited about things? And part of it is just that imagination of any of those moments in any movie. where you just feel like, you know, it's all very subjective, and it's all, especially with Star Wars, you want to feel like you're kind of really in there, and it's all happening around you. And that was really what was driving us, was this sort of very kind of just sort of like taking that level of realism and subjective quality further deeper, you know.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's so many great set pieces in the movie. What was one of the most challenging ones that you guys had to work on?
Well, you know, each one of them, you know, has its own kind of personality, and it's different. You know, that's the great thing about the visual effects world, is it's this massive puzzle. But the weird thing is, the puzzle is always different with every movie. I've never quite figured. I mean, I've been doing this a long time, as Pat has, but you're just always completely taken aback by, you know, you think you understand something, and then it has its own way of developing. And each one of those set pieces is, you know, has its own kind of specific thing. Like the Rathtars aboard Han's freighter is like, kind of, how do you make those feel like this fun kind of action sequence with these creatures, these mad creatures, that is very kind of family orientated, but they're eating people, you know, and they're crazy, but it's kind of fun. And then, you know, how do they move? And they're grabbing Finn, and, you know, the tentacles get chopped off, and he gets kind of ripped off the front of the ship, and all that kind of stuff. And then you have like a Mars type character in the castle, where it's driven by an actress, and that's very delicate kind of motion capture and keyframe animation of Lupita, you know, where you're really developing this personality of this character. And then we're just blowing the shit out of the castle, you know, when the X-Wings turn up, and you've got all these great aerial dogfight moments, and then you've got the kind of supreme kind of David Lean-esque kind of quality of the desert at the beginning, and these really amazing shots of old Star Destroyers. And then that takes you into, I don't know, the incredible or the fun of the chase through the desert of the Millennium Falcon, it taking off, and, you know, and you're really just mixing all these things up. They all have their challenges, and they all have very specific kind of their own personalities. You know?
One thing that was sort of deceptively difficult, I think, was the room with the final confrontation at the end, the large oscillator room that they walk into. You know, it's hard. It's hard.
Bridge,
yeah, the bridge. It's difficult to make a gigantic space like that feel real, and you scales, and you're trying to make things feel like they're far away, yet keep some reality to the look of everything. And it was definitely challenging to come up with that repetitive pattern without making it look too repetitive. You know, and keeping some amount of reality in that was a real challenge. And I think, you know, those are the sorts of things that maybe you don't think about as much, but that whole thing needed to sort of be fleshed out. And, you know, we had a very small set piece to work with, and we had that great walkway that, of course, there's a huge history in Star Wars of walking out on things that don't have any railings. That's something that people in Star Wars, you do that all the time.
You got to walk out into something with no railings.
Yeah, there's a long history of that, but that all is part of the design language that is Star Wars. And so it was fun to try to come up with that and try to make that thing feel like something you remember from, you know, something like Empire, but is different.
And you know, I mean, the great thing about Star Wars is you kind of dip into this world, and you know, just, you know, like when Rey crawls off the side of the corridor, and she goes down into this huge trench with the pill light shapes, you know. I'm in trouble with the police again. Yeah, you have the huge, you know, the pill light repetitive shapes on the walls, and it almost sends a chill down your spine in terms of just the kind of the absolute Star Warsian quality is just off the charts, you know. And, you know, that it's too much fun. It shouldn't be allowed, this kind of thing, should it?
Well, you know, yeah, you talk about the first film a lot, the first films, and I mean, those were such groundbreaking special effects films. I wonder if you felt any of the legacy of that, you know, in your own work, you know, that maybe got you into special effects. And
yeah. Absolutely, yeah. I mean, those, you know, not only, I mean, we work for ILM, you know, they have an incredible history in, you know, ironically, it's their 40th anniversary this year. Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, those movies are, I don't know what they're just the DNA of the company, you know. And it's interesting because I've been, you know, we both worked on a couple of the prequel movies, which in their own way, you know, we're very proud of that work too. But you know, obviously the movies themselves didn't necessarily resonate so much with the fans sometimes, but the work at the time was incredibly complicated and really groundbreaking. Yeah. And you know, I know that they're not necessarily looked at quite that same way or quite in such a favorable light, but it's just interesting to me that all of these movies in their own way have their own sort of set of innovations, you know. And it's just the very nature of the series of movies that allows you to sort of explore these ideas. And that's what we were trying to do with this, is also find a way of giving this kind of new energy, you know.
Yeah, and I feel like I've had another lease on trying some of the things that we've wanted to do for a long time. You know, for instance, on episode 2 and episode 3, I had a lot to do with the development of the tools we use to create the lightsabers, which was a pretty rudimentary technology of just kind of rotoing the stick, you know, adding glows to things. And that was the way we had to do it back then. But now we can afford the technology has afforded us the opportunity to do these things with real 3D systems. Yeah. And that is great to be able to say, oh, now we can do it. We can build the real lightsabers and have the actual interactive light on people's faces. And then we can go in with particles. And so when these things hit together, we can have real interaction between them. Then when they cut things, we can make it look like it's hitting stuff. Yeah. And that's stuff that I was wanting to do way back then on 2 and 3, you know.
And you know, for us, it's just I can't remember if we've mentioned this, but just the collaboration between all the people involved. You know, we've worked with JJ a lot, and you know, that means that we've got a degree of shorthand with him, and you know, he's a fantastic director and really enjoys the collaboration of all these processes. And you can't make a movie like this without, you know, like people like Neil Scanlon, you know, in the creature effects department, and Chris Corbold, you know, the special effects supervisor, and you know, Darren Guilford and Rick Carter of production design. I mean, what we're trying to do is, by all of us, and Dan Mindel actually, I just don't think Dan, who's the director of photography of the show, I mean, the movie looks fantastic, you know, I mean, and it's lit really beautifully, I think. And you're just collaborating with all these people, and obviously they're great talents, and by that very nature, you know, that the fun is that the whole thing becomes bigger than the parts, you know, bigger than the sum of the parts, you know what I mean? And that's the fun of being able to discuss with Neil Scanlon, hey, how do we make Mars look more like one of your creatures rather than a CG character? You know, what are the qualities that you're seeing? And you can just have very honest conversations, and we're very proud of the movie for that reason.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you both so much, and congratulations on your work. It seems the fans were not disappointed, and thank you again.
No, thank you. Thanks for hanging out with us.
Yeah.
On Google, what's it?
Google Hanging.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
Bye.
Bye now.